Hey everyone, this is going to be about the installation of my new diesel heater. Before I start the installation, I thought I would go through all of the bits that came with it and also which bits I'm going to be replacing, because these kits are really intended to be installed on vans and not in boats. So this is the heater. It's a 5 kilowatt heater. I decided to go for this type of heater because I've been relying on electric heat, but electricity has become very expensive. Feels a bit ironic to put a diesel heater on an electric powered boat, but this obviously will work off grid, which you can't do with electric heating. These types of heaters do get a bad rap sometimes, but from what I've seen from my research, that's mainly due to people installing them incorrectly, and when they're correctly installed they should be very reliable. So this, if you can see, is the box of accessories that came with the heater. You get quite a lot of stuff, but unfortunately, as I said, a lot of it is not suitable. So starting with the exhaust, this length is just far too short to use on a boat. You need a much longer length. I have bought this is 2 meters, which is the maximum exhaust length, and I'm probably going to need all of it. So you have this ducting. Again, these 2 lengths of ducting are just far too short, unfortunately, for what I'm going to need. Believe it or not, this apparently is a 5 meter length of ducting, but it just is very compressed, so when I open it out it should go. Also related to the ducting, the heater comes with 2 outlets and a splitter thing. I'm actually only going to be installing 1 outlet. I did want to install 2 and have one in the V-berth as well, because it gets quite damp in there, but I just haven't been able to find a practical way of running ducting all the way from the engine bay where the heater's going to be up to the V-berth. I have also bought a closing vent, which I'm going to use for the inlet, because I'm going to be pulling in the cold air from outside, which I will talk some more about why I'm making that decision later on. Obviously, if you were in big seas, you might want the option of closing the vent. The muffler that comes with the heater is completely not suitable for marine use, mainly because it's not sealed. It has gaps around the edges and it can leak exhaust gases. It's designed to hang underneath the van. I'm not going to be using this. You can get proper sealed marine mufflers. They're very expensive, so for now I'm going to try installing it without and just see how it goes. If it turns out it's too loud, then I'll maybe have to invest in one of the proper marine ones, or maybe get this one welded up. This is a short length of ducting that is for the inlet for the combustion chamber. I may or may not use this. I haven't decided where the combustion air is coming from yet. Here is the fuel pump, which I will be using. It looks decent quality. Here is the fuel filter. This, I guess, is some kind of filter for the inlet air. I'm not actually sure. I'll have to check the booklet. We have wiring harness. This is for the fuel tank. It comes with like a little 10-litre tank. There it is. This is a remote control thing for turning the heater on and off, which hopefully I'll be able to use from my bed in the mornings. That'd be nice. And there's supposed to be another LCD display thing for, I'm not sure where I've put it. Should have been in this box. Have to figure out where that's gone to. Heater comes with this to mount it on. I'm not going to be using this because of the way, with it being a boat, it needs to be sort of raised up, so I'm going to mount it on this bracket instead. Fuel line that comes with the heater, not much good. For some reason it comes with a long length of plastic fuel line and then a short length of proper sort of rubber fuel line. The instruction manual doesn't mention what you're supposed to do with this, it just tells you to use this. So I ordered what I thought was a longer length of this, and it turns out it's actually just black plastic. It was a little bit misleading in the description, so I'm not sure what I'll do with this. I might use it for now and then try and change it out later on. I had a lot of difficulty just trying to find a hose that was the right size. A few more additions. This is the through hole for the exhaust wrap, because it's going to get extremely hot. Exhaust paste to make sure the exhaust is sealed properly, and better quality stainless hose clips for the ducting and the exhaust. Oh, also I've ordered a breaker. This heater's potentially going to draw a little bit too much current for it to go through the distribution panel, so it'll connect the batteries, so I've got a circuit breaker. And I think that is that. And now I need to figure out where that display went. I found the display. It was tucked in with the heater, so this is it. So the first step of installing the diesel heater is to install the exhaust skin fitting. Ideally you would want the exhaust to go through the transom. Because the maximum length of the exhaust is 2 meters, that would mean installing the heater way back there in the transom as well. There's a lot of things that just make that not very practical. The first one being that there just isn't really space to run ducting all the way down from the transom. The best compromise I've come up with is to have it coming out of the outside of the cockpit combing. That allows for a much shorter, more sensible run of ducting. So yeah, let's get to work. Installing the through hull went okay, except it was a little bit challenging when I went to put the metal clamping plate on the back. I drilled the holes for the bolts kind of just big enough, but it ended up not being enough sort of wiggle room to be able to get the plate on. And while I was trying to get it on, crammed inside the locker lid actually shut on my thumb, and yeah, that hurt quite a lot. There was blood. Luckily Nick came along at that point to see how I was doing, and he helped me to drill the holes a bit bigger, and he tightened the bolts up from the outside while I was holding it on the inside. And the next step is to install the mounting bracket. So the stand is on, and I have just plopped the heater on there temporarily so you can just see where it's going to go. I'm about to drill the hole for the hot air outlet. It is going here at the base of the companionway steps, and the idea being that it'll blow hot air all the way down the middle of the boat. I've borrowed this hole saw off Nick because I didn't have one the right size. It's actually slightly too big, but I think I can still make it work. It's still smaller than the flange on the vent, but I might have to make some new holes for the screws to go into because they won't be in the right place anymore. Never drilled a hole that big before with a hole saw. It was just a little bit challenging. It kept coming loose at first, skipping and stuff, but there we go, we have a hole. Okay, I just about managed to get this on. I did have to make new holes. Yeah, there was only just about enough clearance to be able to do it, and I had to use really little screws, but it's okay. It worked, and it should rotate so you can choose the direction of airflow that you want. I had to look it up to figure out. I was wondering why it was such a strange shape. Now it's time to install the inlet vent for the heated air. So I mentioned earlier that I am going to be taking that from outside, and there's two schools of thought on whether you should take it from inside or outside. Some people like to take it from inside because then the air recirculates, which is more efficient because you're not heating up cold air from outside every time. However, the downside with that is that any moisture inside the cabin is also getting recirculated. In the winter it's very damp here. If I have things drying inside, like coats and things, then it's not going to dry out very well if the same air is just being recirculated. I have to run a dehumidifier quite a lot in the winter months, and I'm hoping that by taking the air from outside, maybe that might slightly reduce how much I need to run the dehumidifier. So even though I might spend a little bit more on diesel, I might spend a bit less on electricity, hopefully. The vent is going to go in the cockpit. I think I'm going to put it next to the throttle. I figure that's quite a sheltered position, and it's also far enough away from the exhaust that hopefully I won't have any exhaust getting sucked back in and pumped into the cabin, which we really do not want. I don't think I really got any good shots of doing it, but you can see that I have put in the ducting for the heated air, so it's attached to the heater at one end and to the vent at the base of the companionway steps at the other end. And I've left a little bit of extra slack in it so that I can potentially attach it to the wall, probably not too close to the wall because it might get quite hot. I was planning on doing the exhaust hose next, but it turns out that the hose clamps I bought are just very slightly too big, so when I tried to attach the hose to the bottom of the heater, it fell off. I've had to order some new ones because I can't get them locally. In the meantime, I think I'm going to work on the fuel line. So you may remember me saying that there are two types of fuel line that come with the heater. There is this rubber line and this plastic line. I was quite confused about this, and after a lot of digging, because nowhere actually seems to explain it, not even the manual, it turns out that this line is the right size to go onto the fuel pump and the filter and the heater and all the other attachments. This is a smaller line. Because you only get a short length of this, you are supposed to cut it into sections. So for example, you would have one section here, etc. on the filter and everything as well. And then in between that you tuck this line, which is smaller, into the bigger line and then secure that with hose clips. So I was quite confused why it's done this way. At first I thought it was like a money saving thing because these are cheap heaters, but it turns out it's also done that way with the more expensive German heaters, and apparently it's actually better to have a smaller and more rigid line. I'm not completely sure why, and then the rubber is mainly just to protect the connections. So yeah, apparently that's how you do things. It turns out the black line I bought, even though it's the same inner diameter as this, it's a greater outer diameter, it won't actually fit into here. But luckily this is actually better quality than I thought it was. It's actually nylon, it's not like the green PVC that comes with some of the Chinese heaters. So it should be okay to use this. So we'll see how it goes. So the tank is on the other side of this bulkhead, and this is the fuel line coming from the tank. I have bought this reducer because this hose is wider than the one for the heater. I use a Stanley knife to cut the rubber hose into 6 more or less equal pieces, and now it's just a case of putting everything together. So I'm in the process of installing the fuel line, and I've realised I actually only need a very short length in between the tank and the filter, and also the filter and the pump, so I've just managed to use these short lengths of rubber hose as they are. The filter and pump apparently should be on a slight upwards incline, so that's what I've tried to do, and also the pumps can be very loud when they're running due to vibration, so some people recommend hanging them from a cable tie. Luckily I just happen to have this bracket here in the right place, which I think was from an old fuel filter for the engine or something, I can't remember. I have this here and I just need to do the final length going up to the heater, and then that should hopefully hold it out from the bulkhead so it won't bump into the bulkhead. One thing I just wanted to show you is these hose clips that come with the fuel line. I might be an idiot, but I was actually quite confused by them. Because I hadn't seen them before and I had to look up how they work. Basically how you use them, for anyone who's as clueless as me, is you squeeze these tabs and then it becomes wide enough to slide over the hose, and when you've got it where you want it you let go and it kind of self-tightens and it holds things there just by tension. So yeah, if anyone else was confused, I hope that helps. Alright, so the fuel line is in and I ended up only needing the tiniest bit of the plastic line right here at the end. I'm thinking maybe I might just buy a longer piece of this because it feels a bit silly to have this join here. It's looking okay. I don't really like this kink here. I think if I just fix it to the bulkhead I can get it at a better angle, so hopefully this will work okay. So the exhaust clamps are supposed to be arriving today, and I was just experimenting with the routing of the exhaust, and my original plan was to have it passing through this gap in the bulkhead so that the ducting is also passing through, and I have found some issues with that. The main one being that if I route it this way the exhaust is actually going to be slightly too short. It would probably just about reach the through hull, but then there wouldn't be enough left over to make a gooseneck, which is very important. And also it's passing very close to a lot of other things like the fuel line and the ducting, and yeah, I think it might melt them. So I think instead I may be able to drill a hole here in the bulkhead and have the hose coming this way, and it should be a more direct line towards the through hull, which is kind of, it's in the cockpit combing, so just like up a bit from here, and hopefully then it will be long enough. Fingers crossed. If not, then I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do. Okay, so I think I've figured out that with the exhaust going through the bulkhead it will just about be long enough. Before the clamps arrive and I fix everything into place, I thought it would be better to put the insulation on now because it will be probably trickier afterwards. So I'm wearing gloves because this is basically like fiberglass and it is very prickly and uncomfortable on your skin. They supply metal cable ties, which makes things easier. The exhaust is now on after a team effort between me and Nick. We're almost ready to hook up the electronics and then we'll be able to start the heater. The only thing that's left to do is the exhaust is getting a little bit too close to some of the ducting and the fuel line. So we are going to fix things to the bulkhead, maybe using some cable ties, so that they don't directly touch the exhaust. Especially here, even though it's insulated, it's still going to get very hot, so to try and attach it so that it doesn't directly touch the wooden bulkhead.
That's going to be flipped up. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Control panels on.
Yeah, it came on. That's a good start.
P power 12 volts. Power off.
Oh, it started. Oh, it's getting faster.
Oh, diesel's coming into the thing, so it is working.
Oh, that's good.
So it's going to take ages to prime, so it might well say, oh, I'm unhappy.
We're getting some warm air out of the vent. What's the verdict on the heater?
Hot. Very hot.
Oh yeah, we've got a little bit of smoke, but it's the exhaust wrap, we believe. It's apparently normal when you first use it, so hopefully nothing serious. We haven't got any carbon monoxide according to the alarm. The trial of the heater went really well. It got up to temperature really quickly, then we were able to turn it down, and even on the very lowest setting it maintained the boat at quite a comfortable room temperature while using very little fuel. So I'm really happy, I'm really pleased with it. As I mentioned, we were a little bit worried at first because there was some smoke coming off the exhaust hose, but it was just the exhaust wrap. There's some stuff in it that burns off the first time it gets hot, so that's all it was. We used the carbon monoxide detector, it found no carbon monoxide whatsoever, so that's good. Ironically, the weather has now suddenly become quite mild and I don't really need the heater, but I'm sure it will get cold again soon enough. Finally, just wanted to say a big thank you to Nick for helping me out, especially with the wiring. He put a lot of effort into making sure that it was all done properly, and I really appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.